Intel just released earnings and investors are super excited. The stock is up over 7%. I did an earnings video overview in my previous episode. On today's episode, what I want to do is take a closer look at what some of the commentary that Intel shared and how AMD and Nvidia investors, two companies that I'm very, very bullish on, should consider or should think about with this commentary that Intel shared. So let's take a closer look in today's episode. So first, if we take a closer look at the prepared remarks, the company mentioned two main products or two main segments that both AMD and Nvidia are in. First, they talked a little bit about their client business, and they did mention that their client business exceeded expectations and gained share yet again in quarter two as the group executed well, seeing modest recovery in the consumer and education segment, as well as strength in the premium segment. They do mention that customers have already managed client CPU inventory down to healthy levels, and they see a sustained recovery in the second half of the year as the inventory has normalized. So let's start off with this. So the client segment, I want to say one of the biggest portion of NVIDIA's revenue is obviously the gaming side. And we can see the gaming side was down roughly 38% year over year. It was up 22% quarter over quarter. So we do see that the inventory correction is behind us. We already saw it. We actually heard it from NVIDIA last quarter. So I do believe this is going to be a good momentum going forward, that quarter two fiscal year of 2024 for NVIDIA, they are going to do some strong quarter over quarter results on their gaming segment, which obviously would bode well for the revenue. Now for AMD, I do want to say this is going to be both good and bad. The reason being is we did hear from Intel that they are gaining market share back. So obviously that's not necessarily good for AMD, and that could be seen as a bearish case. But I don't believe they're gaining a dramatic market share. So right now we can see in AMD's most recent earnings for quarter one, which was roughly 3 months ago, their the earnings call was roughly 3 months ago. Net revenue was down 65% for their client market. So if we are seeing an inventory correction going back to modest or inventory going back to healthy levels, even if AMD is losing market share in this segment, I do believe we are going to see a nice quarter over quarter growth for their net revenue side. Another thing that investors might get excited, and I do believe we're going to start to see, is operating income. We are seeing a huge loss in quarter one 2023 for the client side in AMD. I do believe it's possible that maybe we get closer to a break even in quarter two, or we might even get better expectations, and we're going to see this in the positive side. Obviously, we can see operating income at a loss was this was the only segment that AMD was seeing money loss in the most recent quarter, and I do believe that might change in the upcoming quarter. On the bright end, that might also bode well for the company's gaming segment, as the gaming segment also does include AMD's GPUs that go in their laptops. So obviously, if there's some inventory correction happening, inventories back to healthy levels, we might see some of their gaming net revenue maybe up again, even though it wasn't that much down year over year, because it's still kind of being driven by the Xbox and the PlayStation. Now we have to see how those are selling, which can obviously impact the gaming market. So overall, I do want to say it's most likely very good news for both AMD and Nvidia in form of their consumer market, and I definitely like to see that. I'm honestly shocked. I'm personally shocked that AMD barely moved on the news that Intel did well, because a good portion of Intel doing well was on their client segment, right? Not too much on their data center segment. And I'm very surprised. Obviously for Nvidia, this is a company that has run up so much in the past year to date. So I don't think it's going to move much on too much good news. I do believe a lot of it has been priced in. So now I want to talk about the data center market. And the data center market, we also see a little bit of good and a little bit of bad. But before we go any further, guys, if you are enjoying the episode, make sure to hit the thumbs up. If you want to help out, make sure to hit the subscribe button. If you're not a subscriber, I'm trying to hit 30,000 subs by the end of the year. Also, if you want to support the channel and want to learn more about the semiconductor market, I do have a membership program where I do weekly videos on the semiconductor space. It's the Semiconductor Investing Membership. Just get joined. And finally,
Finally, I want to thank The Motley Fool for sponsoring this video, and check out fool.com/Jose for the 10 best stocks to buy now. With that link, you get a promotional offer for the subscription service. Now, let's continue with today's episode.
All right, so let's take a closer look at what Intel has to say about the data center market. And they mentioned they saw great progress in their fourth generation AI acceleration capabilities and now estimate that more than 25% of the Xeon data center shipments are targeted for AI workloads. I do want to say, obviously, a good portion of their CPUs are going to be targeted for AI workloads because they do have that partnership with Nvidia's DGX system. Let me just kind of pull it up here. DGX H100, which is powered by Nvidia's H100 GPUs, but they're also powered by Intel's fourth generation CPUs. We can see here fourth generation. Where do I see it? Oh, yep, the Xeon 8000 series, which is the fourth generation series. So I think this is to be expected that a good portion of these CPUs were going to go for AI workloads because they are kind of partnered up with that NVIDIA market. Now, they do mention that while we performed ahead of expectations, the quarter two consumption total addressable market for servers remains soft on persistent weakness across all segments, but particularly in enterprise and the rest of the world, where the recovery is taking longer than expected across the entire industry. So obviously, we are still seeing some weakness in the data center market to some extent, right? This is what we're seeing here. I don't believe that might be the case too much for AMD. I do believe Intel has a little bit more exposure into the Chinese market with their server CPUs than AMD. So maybe AMD might not be seeing too much of this total addressable market contraction. The other thing is Intel does mention in their earnings slide that they're still obviously seeing competitive pressure. That competitive pressure is definitely AMD's fourth generation and third generation server CPUs. Now, they also mentioned something else. They mentioned that they see the server CPU inventory digestion persisting in the second half, additionally impacted by near-term wallet share focus on AI accelerators rather than general purpose compute in the cloud. So they still believe that there's going to be some weakness, at least for the CPU market in quarter three for Intel. Now, the real question is AMD going to see that same kind of weakness in the CPU market? I'm honestly not too sure. I'm gonna have to guess if I was to say put a probability. I would say maybe there's a more likely chance that AMD might not see it, but obviously I could be wrong there. The other thing that we saw here, though, is something that Nvidia investors should be really excited. They do mention that a lot of the focus right now is going to AI accelerators rather than general purpose computing. They do expect quarter three server CPUs to modestly decline sequentially before recovering in quarter four. And I wonder if this is why AMD investors, like I mentioned, are maybe a little bit worried that, hey, quarter three might be a little bit lagging, or what AMD might give us in quarter two might give us some guidance, some weak guidance on that quarter three data centers. That's obviously the case. I don't know why I believe that's not necessarily going to be as strong as what Intel is seeing. Obviously, we'll have to wait for the earnings call. The second thing that we saw was that a huge amount of money is being spent on accelerators, right? And obviously, that accelerators are GPUs. And the big winner here is NVIDIA with their H100 GPU product. So I do believe this is great news for NVIDIA, but we already know coming in that NVIDIA has high expectations on their earnings. They gave us a crazy guidance due to the data center market. So I do believe a lot of investors are already expecting this. The only thing I want to say that NVIDIA can really do to maybe shocked investors is that if NVIDIA was able to partner up with other players to help with the advanced packaging is what's really the bottleneck for NVIDIA right now, what's causing them to only have limited inventory or limited supply on their products. If they're able to kind of increase that with partnering up with other players, then I do believe NVIDIA can go and be like, hey, look, we actually got more inventory productions. We work with our partners really well, so we're actually going to increase guidance because right now we're seeing that wallet size, that demand is really high for our products. So I do believe that's the case. Obviously, Intel, they do have some accelerators. They do mention that they roughly have a $1 billion pipeline of the Gaudi 2. I talked about that in the previous earnings call. But AMD also has some form of AI accelerators, right? They have AI accelerators in forms of their FPGA systems, of course, accelerators thanks to the Xilinx acquisition. And finally, their MI250 and their upcoming MI300, which is expected to come out in the second half, in the late half of this year. So obviously, AMD can definitely benefit maybe from some orders, as we have heard from Nvidia's, from reports that Nvidia's H100 product right now has a huge lead time. So right now, it does seem like we are seeing a lot of bullish cases for Nvidia. Unfortunately, it does seem like a lot of it has been priced in. I think the only way Nvidia can really surprise us if they're able to increase on that supply and be able to to kind of increase that partnership and be able to have increase their overall supplies. I think for AMD right now, investors are a little bit worried of, hey, how the CPU market for the data center market might go in the short term of things. Overall, though, in the long term, I'm still very bullish on AMD and Nvidia. So I hope you guys enjoyed this quick update. Take care, have a good day, and see you next time.